Catherine Drysdale is a board-certified sex and relationship coach, sexuality educator, and the founder of Your Pleasure Path. With certifications in many things, including neuro-linguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, hypnosis, and time techniques, she combines neuroscience-backed tools with deep empathy to help individuals and couples rewrite their narratives and cultivate fulfilling, intimate lives. Catherine's work, I think, is informed by her lived experience, by her personal journey through trauma healing and empowerment. She's been featured in so many publications like Cosmo, Allure, Vice, Ask Men, and so many others. And through her coaching, workshops, and very open online presence, Catherine empowers clients to embrace pleasure, which is so important, set healthy boundaries, and explore their desires with confidence. So thank you so much for finding the time to join today. I think the first thing I wanted to ask, if that's okay, is just to get a little bit of an understanding about who you were in your formative years, what were your teens like, what was your early experience of sex and sexuality and what it meant to you.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. Super excited to be here. Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the past is super important. So I, like many people, grew up in a pretty like sex negative household. And by sex negative, I mean like it was not talked about at all. Very close lipped. I wasn't necessarily religious. Like I grew up going to
Mhm.
church here and there. We were like a holiday church family, if that
Yep.
makes sense. And sometimes Sunday school just to like have something to do because I was the oldest of four kids growing up. My parents wanted a break, so they sent me there. And I didn't go through the confirmation process because at that time in like middle school, I was like, I don't know that I believe in God, don't want to do it. And my parents were going through a
Okay.
divorce. So it was like, this is a perfect opportunity to not do this because there's enough distractions. And then I went to boarding school for my first year of high school. So I was in boarding school when I was 14. Part of that was to I don't know, escape my family dynamics. I didn't get along with my mom. The sex negativity really started happening before I went to high school. I had a going away party, the hot tub in the pool in the backyard. My mom overheard a friend of a friend talking about blowjobs in the hot tub, and she automatically assumed that I was having sex when I had never done anything up until that point. And my first kiss was actually at this party. It was a dare between me and this friend of a friend who I'd never met before, who was a girl. And so my first kiss was a girl. That was a dare in front of everyone. But before that, I never did anything. This whole drive to boarding school, which she threatened to send me to. And I was like, wait, this sounds like a great idea. Let me get away from this. But the whole drive, she was telling me how much of a slut she thought I was and that she hoped I got butt fucked and all this horrible stuff for this like 3 hour drive. And like, obviously, that's horrible to hear like your parents saying that about you. And then what I realized once I got there is like, why am I trying so hard to be the good girl if my own parents like don't even like me? So that sort of led to the permission of me making friends with the wrong people. I started having sex. I started doing drugs. I started drinking. I started doing all like the naughty things that you're not supposed to do. And like boarding school for a lot of folks, it's where a lot of rich kids with fucked up parents send their
Mhm.
kids because they don't want to deal with them. So more money, more problems, more drug use, more sex. Like that's just the nature of what it's like. And through that, basically, like I got in a lot of trouble. And then the first time I had sex, my roommate told on me. The whole school found out. And my punishment was to speak to the school priest at a school that was supposed to be non denominational. I had to tell my parents. I was forced to go home for the weekend, see my pediatrician, who forced me to go on birth control and take the depot shot instead of like traditional pills because she didn't trust me to not get pregnant. And so like I felt like I had no autonomy in any of it. And I was just like following what I thought everyone thought I was supposed to do just because I was 14, which was horrible. I was bullied at school because everyone was like, "Oh, you had a good time. And I was like, yeah, because you weren't there. My boyfriend was stress puking in the nurse's office. And that just goes to show, too, like the difference of like women being slut
Yeah.
shamed and men celebrated for like having sex. Because it was boarding school, too. Like that's where I leaned into, I don't know, like more non-traditional like ways and like um places to have sex. Like in boarding school, you're not supposed to have like the
Mhm.
opposite gender like in your
Yeah.
dorm room. So we would hook up in like the art studio, the baseball diamond, random bathrooms. So we just found a place. That's also where like my interest with like group dynamics or like some voyeuristic tendencies and stuff like that happened. But that sort of like opened the door to me realizing if everyone already thinks I'm a slut, might as well live up to the name. Which in some ways it was shitty how that happened, but in a lot of ways it made it kind of like more empowering. I'm like, okay, so what? They're already talking about me. Let's give them something to talk about. And so basically throughout high school and college, like I was exploring things. With this boyfriend, like we both left the school at the same time, and that relationship, once we became long distance, like that turned into a non-monogamous relationship that lasted 2.5 years. And so that also was interesting. I was the only person I knew who was 14 pursuing non-monogamy. And still, like, I have a lot of friends who are doing that now. It's not common. And so I think in a lot of ways, by having my sexual debut and like early sexual experiences have a lot of shame, I think it helped me, I don't know, give myself permission to say, fuck it, and just do what I wanted anyways. Sorry, can I
Yeah,
swear?
absolutely. Please do. And did you, looking back now, were you enjoying the sex that you were having?
Uh yes and no. I think like it wasn't until I was in my mid 20s is when I started having like truly enjoyable
Yeah.
sex. I think for the first 10 years really I was having sex. Like I enjoyed it, but like it I wasn't present in the experience, and I think part of that is like conditioning of women in general. Like we're not taught that our pleasure matters,
Yeah.
period. Like when we're, and we talked about this a little earlier, it's like when we're taught about sex, most of the time it's like the
Mhm.
mechanics of
Yep.
sex, and in the framework of very heterocentric, like when a man comes, the sex act is completed and that's it. We're not taught about foreplay. We're not taught that women have the same erectile tissue as men. It's just internal. We're not taught about any of these things. And so, especially at that time, like I didn't know that I needed foreplay. I did masturbate often. I did experience orgasms here or there, but my relationship with like sex and masturbation was kind of like a stress
Yeah.
relief in a way. Like I wanted to get the orgasm as quickly as possible. I wasn't embodied in the experience. I had a lot of shame with my body. I was dealing with body image issues, eating disorders, like just so much going on. I even remember, I think like the first time this partner tried going down on me, I was repulsed. Like I was so uncomfortable, and I had so much shame around my vulva too. Like, and I didn't even know it was called a vulva until I started working in this field. I'm like, why are we all calling it vag, cooch, pussy? When like,
Yeah.
it's like we're not taught the language because women are taught to like shame their bodies. And so I felt very disconnected in my experiences. I did not feel comfortable speaking up for what I wanted. Part of that is like I didn't know what I wanted, I didn't explore
Mhm.
enough. And part of it is I was so deeply insecure that I was afraid that if I expressed my needs, that the other person wouldn't want to sleep with me. And I was so desperate for validation that I was willing to do whatever they wanted, just to have a little hit of that, that dopamine, that intimacy, even when it was purely sexual.
It's wonderful and positive to see the person you've become in spite of that, and I guess to some extent because of that. But it's a very, very painful experience. I'm sure it isn't necessarily that unusual amongst lots of young women in particular. It's because we as a society, and particularly as men, I guess, we have always understood that sex is penetration, basically. We sort of foreplay, well, that's the stuff that comes beforehand. Yeah, if you do that, just get to the main course, which is penetration. And penetration finishes when the man comes, and that's it. That's sex. And
Mm-hmm.
I talked to a somatic coach a few months ago, and she was saying that one of the gaps we have in our own education is that when we start masturbating, we typically do it very quickly to get off, just because we're nervous somebody's going to come in. We like say it's a bit of stress relief, that sort of thing. But we don't at that age. Most people, anyway, I certainly didn't spend an hour or 2 hours just exploring our body. And
Mm-hmm.
she was saying she sees a lot of female clients, and a lot of those clients, they may be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, have never looked at their vulva with a mirror, have never seen themselves. And and she says, so yeah, exactly. You said when somebody's going down on you, or when somebody's eating you out, it's like, oh my god, how can they be enjoying that? It must be so uncomfortable. Why are they doing that? And you feel so tense. And that whole thing about not exploring our own bodies and sensations just seems to be such a big gap, really. And it almost feels that you explored your sexuality, I guess, with other people almost immediately. Before you'd had a chance to sort of figure it out for yourself, you dived into, like, say, the place that people had stated you were already at. And part of the reason, I guess, and part of the pleasure came from saying, well, yeah, see, I'm showing you now. I'm doing what I want to do. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I think it was like parallel journeys of like exploring my pleasure while also exploring pleasure with other people. Cause I think I started masturbating and having sex like pretty close when I was
Yeah.
14 at boarding school. That's when I started doing
Mm-hmm.
both. And I think I like my first vibrator was like a little bullet that I got from this store called Spencer's, which is like very common here in the US. Not, I don't think they exist anymore, but it's like a store that you go in for like kitschy, weird stuff, alternative, whatever, but it's not a sex
Mm-hmm.
toy shop. But I just was trying to chase it as quickly as possible, wasn't embodied in the experience. And like not to say that I didn't enjoy sex,
Mm.
like I did, but it was still very much like performance driven.
Yeah.
Um to where I was doing what I thought that they wanted. And I was, yeah, chasing situations, people, things, hooking up with random people. I was the friend that had all the crazy sex stories. I also was the friend that gave everyone sex advice, who they would come to. Like I went to Planned Parenthood to get like my birth control, my Plan B, my condoms, whatever. Like, and I will be honest, like I didn't always have like safe sex, but I was still the one that you would call if you needed something. And then I think there's one time I think I cut off a friend because she kept coming to me for Plan B. And I was like, you need to start having conversations with your partners if you're letting them come in you and you're not even using condoms. Like, why are you not even talking about it? Like, you're not supposed to be taking this like it's birth control.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of how we think about like pleasure as a whole, I mean, it wasn't really until I'd say most women in general, and I think a lot of people, but especially women, only see pleasure or sex in relation to other people and not necessarily their relationship with themselves. And I think like we're seeing a shift of
Mm.
that lately. And I think during
Mm-hmm.
COVID, there's a huge rise and like boom of like sex toys and stuff like that. But I know like there's still women who are my age who have never masturbated once in their life and they still feel so much shame. Like I met a woman who was this is when I lived in Austin, which like Texas is a very like conservative state, doesn't have a lot of sex education. She was 36. I'll be 32 this year and this was like maybe 3 years ago or so. But she didn't even know what a clitoris was and certainly not where it was at 36. I had never had sex and that wasn't an issue. And I told her, I was like, look, you know, like that's totally fine if you're saving it for marriage, like no shame in that. But like at the very least, you should know what your anatomy looks like. First of all, just in
Yeah.
general, you should know what your body looks like. And then number two, like maybe explore pleasure for yourself. And I think what makes a lot of women so disconnected is like our pleasure is like so deeply tied to like sex being done to
Yeah.
us instead of being an active participant in our
Yeah.
sex lives. And when we're not masturbating, we're not giving ourselves permission to explore what feels good, to explore different sensations, to try different things. And I know, like, I work with a lot of women who struggle to experience orgasm, or they feel frustrated when like they can come by themselves but not with their partner. And it's like, number one, if you are having an orgasm at all, amazing, love that for you. But the reason why is like we're likely doing different things when we're by ourselves versus with our partner. So like if you have your like rabbit vibrator on the highest setting and then you're with your partner and you're not having that same sensation, no wonder you're not getting off if that's what you're doing. And not saying like I don't believe that like vibrators can desensitize you at all. I think everyone's different, but like if you're not bringing in the same
Yeah.
tools, of course it's not going to work. And that's why I think it's so important to be more mindful in our like self-pleasure practice. And I like reframing like masturbation to
Mhm.
self-pleasure, because it becomes like when it becomes like a ritual, something that we're doing for
Yeah.
ourselves, not to
Mm.
ourselves, that helps us feel more connected, and then gives ourselves permission to like switch things up. Like instead of using the same hand, the same lube, the same porn or erotica or whatever, try a different hand, try a different position, do it in front of a mirror, do it in the bath, like switch it up a little bit. And that will give you permission to like figure out what works for you. And the more you give yourself permission to figure out what works for you, the easier it is to communicate what that is to your partner. And like there are studies that show that like women who masturbate frequently have better sex lives with their partner because they're feeling satisfied and they know how to communicate their
Yeah.
needs.
It's a really interesting definition when you think of it as self pleasure or pleasuring yourself, because we wouldn't deny ourselves, hopefully we wouldn't, time to go to the little coffee shop, have a beautiful coffee, an amazing piece of cake, and it's just purely indulgent, it's just for our pleasure. It's the same thing in a way, or going out on our own, or just going for a run or a walk, or whatever, or just sitting around watching crappy TV. We're doing it just for our pleasure. So the thought that we can do that with ourselves as well in our bodies, it just, yeah, it's all self pleasure. I think is really really interesting. It's funny you talked about try it in a bath, whatever. I was talking to the creator of Le Wand and Bee Vibe the other day, which is fabulous. And she was saying one
Mhm.
of the newest toys that they're bringing out, which is they've had a huge demand for, is a completely waterproof one. So most of them are sort of splash proof using the shower and stuff, but so this is completely
Yeah.
submergible, and so it's just the one that everybody keeps asking for. So yeah, so that'll be coming out soon. Um, One of the things that has sort of saddened me, but even worse in a way, not necessarily surprised me, since I've been doing this, talking to people, talking to women mainly, is that a lot of women have suffered some form of sexual assault or trauma. I would say certainly the majority of women I've talked to have, just to some degree or another. And I know you've done a lot of really powerful work about helping people not necessarily overcome, because that almost sounds like the wrong word, but to understand that in the context of relationships and the feelings that we have, etc. And I wondered how do you help people with that part of their life, and how do you get them to be comfortable being intimate with somebody again?
Yeah. Very, very layered
Mm.
question, which is beautiful. I think part of that, so like I myself, like I am a survivor of sexual assault. Like I was raped when I was in college. And like that also was a situation with a lot of like shame, guilt, like so many survivors experience. And like it was two men on my college campus. I was completely blacked out. And I did everything right. In the moment, because I was not fully
Mm.
conscious. I think a lot of people who are survivors who experience that kind of trauma dissociate a
Mhm.
lot. And that was the experience that I had, where it was a fully out of body experience. It was a freeze response to where I felt like I had no control of my body. And that's your brain protecting yourself to keep you safe. And like when we think of the trauma responses, freeze is like playing
Yeah.
dead, like animals do in the wild, to make yourself as like unappealing to whoever is attacking you or whatever is
Mhm.
attacking you. And so like in that moment, like I don't even know that I said stop or no. I started crying. I waited until they were done and tried to get my stuff together and leave. At one point, I think like the roommates came in, but no one stopped it. But it was just an awful experience. Then I like walked to my roommates, and I was living on campus. This was in college, my sophomore year, and told my roommates, I was like, I don't know, like this situation felt weird. I don't know what happened. Like I was kind of like gaslighting
Mm.
myself, questioning myself, like what really happened. Cause I also was someone who was very sexually empowered. I was hooking up with people all the time, enjoying myself, putting myself out there. But like that situation felt very, very
Mhm.
different. And I think part of it is like I was fully blacked out. Like I do not remember most of it until I woke up in the middle of it. And I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Um, and my roommates convinced me to like report it. I reported it to campus safety. I got them both arrested. I met with the DA. I decided not to pursue legal action because basically they told me because I had a reputation of being a slut, and all of these frat guys had video footage of me giving lap dances on this party bus before, then no one would believe me and I would be dragged in court. And now all of this happened before the Me Too
Yeah.
movement started. This was in 2012. So part of it was like the climate. It just like wasn't the time. And like not only was I gaslit and like didn't feel safe enough to pursue it legally, I was bullied on campus again for speaking up against what happened to me. And then my actual school basically told me it wasn't rape. And because it was two against one, they took the side of the other people. And it also was political. One of them was the son of the dean of the business school. So obviously nothing was going to happen. And like I went through the whole judicial process. They were supposed to do a stay away order. They didn't even honor that. There was one instance where one of them, um, I saw in the study room in my dorm across the hall. I was taking out trash and he was there, and I like was terrified. Called public safety. They're like, well, of course he doesn't know which dorm you're in. And I'm like, you should just fucking tell them which dorms to avoid. Like that should not be happening. And then the next semester, I never was able to take psychology in undergrad because the semester I registered for it, he also came into the class 20 minutes late, and I was paralyzed, sat there for the whole class period, ran out, talked to my like advisor, who was such a wonderful woman and like really helped me so much through this experience. Otherwise I would have been so alone. But I was the one who had to transfer out of the class, not him. And so like I, like many people, like my situation is very common, but I think like a lot of survivors don't even report it.
Yeah.
They don't even talk about it because no one believes them. And like that's, I think, back to kind of like why I'm doing this. It's like to end rape culture starts with having the hard conversations and like speaking up. And part of like my healing journey, like I wasn't given the resources that I needed. I was supposed to see like an on campus psychologist who was a man who basically told me that I was an alcoholic and I deserved what happened to me. And so like obviously that wasn't helpful. So I did what most people do, compartmentalized it, put it in the back of my head, try to forget about it, and I wanted to have as normal as an experience as possible. At the time, I only told my mom and sister, my roommates, and then people at school knew, but like I didn't even tell my dad until years later. Now, fast forward in my first job out of college, I used to work in PR for film publicity, and entertainment already is a beast. And I went from like crying in the bathroom to crying at my desk, because also at the same time, that's when the Me Too movement was starting. That's when the Brock Turner case was happening, with that swimmer from
Yeah.
Stanford. And then that's also when the show 13 Reasons Why came out, and I watched it knowing that it was about suicide, but I didn't know that there was going to be an actual rape depiction in it. And watching that was like what triggered a full complete mental breakdown, to where like I could not function, and I had to go on a medical leave of absence, leave my job in entertainment, and I was pretty much suicidal after that. I was debating inpatient treatment. I ended up seeing my therapist 3 times a week instead. I did TMS, which is an experimental treatment for depression, because meds weren't working for me. And basically my only goal was to like feel better and heal. And that was the first time in my life where I ever like gave myself permission to like focus on
Mhm.
myself and my healing and try to feel better. So like I went back to school. I was taking some like digital marketing classes, how to become an influencer. I was working out and started working with a personal trainer, and like everything was just like helping me try to find my purpose, trying to figure out what that was about. And with my journey, how I got to here is in this personal branding class, how to become an influencer. I wanted to make my dog Instagram famous, not myself. And the first night of class, the professor said there's a difference between having influence and having impact. And that was my light bulb moment to where I was like, oh, fuck, I went through all of this shit and all of this trauma and all of these challenges because I'm supposed to help people. And not that I had all the
Yeah.
answers, but I'm like, I've been fumbling and struggling and been in and out of therapy since I was 10 years old. I've experienced all this shit. So, like, why not help people so that they don't have as hard of a time as I did? Because, like, truly, like, I've always been someone that has that. So, a week later, I signed up for my first life coaching certification. That same semester is when I was asked to speak on my college campus to share my rape story, which was like terrifying. I thought I was going to throw up, but it was very validating to get the respect of a lot of these like frat guys who were like, thank you so much for sharing. And that sort of was the catalyst that put me on this path. Now, I still at that point had a lot of healing that I
Mm.
needed to do myself. I wasn't ready to hold people in their trauma yet, because I still was working through like the stages of grief, which is, I think, for trauma and PTSD, I think that's really important to give yourself permission to go through
Yeah.
that. And then once I got past the rage, the rage stage, to realizing like, fuck, I never got the justice I deserved. What helped me changed my life and led me into the path that I am now is realizing that like my true justice is actively working against changing rape culture and ending rape culture. And that's where me moving fully into like trauma healing and support, is like how I'm able to do that is providing pleasure-based education for people that's very consent driven and trauma informed. That's where I added the
Mm.
certifications like neurolinguistic programming, EFT tapping, and hypnosis. And like as someone who's been in therapy since I was 10, like traditional talk therapy didn't work for me to heal my sexual trauma, but NLP did. NLP was a tool that helped me feel like I could release the pain that it caused me. And how it works is it allows you to go back to past memories or where you had a limiting decision or belief that changed your whole life, and we can go back to the moment, intentionally disassociate by several levels so that you're not reliving the emotions that are occurring, and that is how you're able to heal. And that's why like I think it's so important when it comes to trauma healing that people realize that like talk therapy actually can be more triggering for you. And if you've been seeing a therapist for a while and you're feeling like you're just not getting there might be another tool that's helpful. It could be NLP and hypnosis. It could be EMDR. It could be somatic therapy. I really like doing
Mhm.
somatic with the subconscious tools, but just know like you're not broken if the tool that you've tried isn't working. It could be the practitioner is the wrong person for you and you don't feel like you trust them enough. It could be the tool. It could be a combination of tool. And it could also be, I think this is the key piece, if you don't feel safe in your body and you don't have a support system, it's going to be very, very hard for your subconscious mind to allow you to heal in the way that you need to. If you're in fight or flight, if you're in survival mode, if you don't have a support system, if you don't have people in your life who you feel like have your back, it's going to be so much harder to heal. It's going to be an uphill battle. You're going to be triggered all the time if you don't feel safe to let your guard down. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, no, no. It was, but in the kindest possible way. So, first of all, I'm terribly sorry you had to go through that experience. I mean, I think in the UK, I'm not sure what it's in the US, but in the UK, the stats are for every 100 women that report a rape, initially report it, initial report, whatever, one person gets convicted. So it's 100 people are sort of cited, and they might not decide to go through with it or keep going ahead with it. But for every 100 rates reported, one person gets found guilty. And then, like say, you don't know how many people just don't report at all. The numbers must be many, many magnitudes higher than that because
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't even
no,
know the full
no,
numbers because, like, there's so many people who won't even admit it to
yes,
themselves, I think, and
yeah,
that's because of a lot of the, like, victim
mhm,
blaming and internalized shame. I mean, I even was gaslighting myself to convince myself not to report it, even though very clearly it was something that was done to
yeah,
me, not something that I was a participant in. And I know there's a lot of people who, I mean, I'm sure you know, like the way that trauma works is like some people will realize in their
yeah,
50s, 60s, 70s, 80s that they experienced trauma from
yeah,
childhood. Maybe they were molested by their neighbor. Maybe it was something in college. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was with their partner where like maybe they were having sex until it wasn't consensual. And I think
yeah,
like that's what's the biggest piece is like, yes, sexual assault, sexual trauma in general is so common, but I think what's even more common is there are so many people who experience that sort of like gray
mm,
area of like sexual assault or non-consent to where it was consensual until it
yeah,
wasn't, or like the coercion piece where a lot of women especially feel like it's easier to just go through with it than like own their boundaries because they're afraid of what else could
yeah,
happen as a result. And coercion is not consent too. And there's so many people that realize like later in life that hey, actually there was a situation that wasn't. Like I had an experience with someone that I was hooking up with in college who was very consensual. We were into each other and he wanted to have anal. I said no. He did it anyways, and I let him finish because he was physically bigger
yeah.
than me. He was also 4 years older than me. He was a senior and I was a freshman, so that already was like weird power dynamics. And then I blocked him on everything. Never wanted to speak to him again, and he sent me a message on LinkedIn.
Oh my goodness.
And I told him straight up, I was like, if you ever speak to me again, I know where your parents live and I will tell them what you did, and never heard from him again because he actually grew up in my neighborhood. But we went to college together. I didn't know him back then, but we grew up in the same town, even though we're in different college. And like that situation too is like, I think number one, it's like, I don't know. It's just, yeah, that situations like that are so
Oh,
common to where so many women feel like they're obligated to just do it. Otherwise, for fear of something worse happening.
yeah, it's like the sort of thing. Well, once you're having consensual sex, then well, we're having sex, and anything's going to go, isn't it? Isn't it? Which is really interesting when I talk to people in that particularly part of the BDSM and some kink communities. They talk about one of the big turn-ons of their relationship is the discussion, the negotiation before. So there's the yes, no, maybe sort of camp, and there's the safe words and things.
Mhm.
Whereas a lot of people that are in traditional heteronormative relationships that maybe have vanilla sex, we never talk about. We rarely talk about. Sit down and talk about. Say, I want to try this. Talk about this. No, I don't like that. But we have sex. We have sex, and it's weird. Sometimes people think, "Oh, BDSM kink. God, that's so weird. That's so kinky." But actually, it's very consensually driven, and they really talk about it. Some people have written contracts. It's yeah, very very different thing altogether. Not that this would help or would have helped anything at all, but did the two uh, rapists ever acknowledge and apologize?
No, but also I never gave them a chance to. I was not
Yeah,
interested. I'm very much the type of person, it's like, once you
yeah,
wrong me, I'm like, you're dead to me. Like, I block everyone, like, even past partners that I've
mhm,
had where, like, it wasn't traumatic or
yeah,
whatever, like, once that chapter of my life is
mhm,
finished, like, I'm done. And here's the thing, it's like a lot of so, like, that frat was a frat that was associated with that kind of behavior. Like their stigma that they had was that this is a frat of rapists, and to the point where that frat was kicked off of campus. So they weren't even allowed to be an official chapter because of the reputation that they had. And so like people who have that kind of reputation, this probably wasn't the first time. And
yeah,
especially with people with access to positions of power. I mean, like, not to bring in like the Diddy case too, but it's like with that power dynamic too, it's like
Absolutely.
that's where more problematic things happen when you have access to more power, more money,
Yeah.
the age dynamics. There's so many things that it
Hmm.
can influence that. And um in terms of like apology, nah, but I also wasn't interested in
Mm.
that. Like, I know for me, like, I had to like forgive myself for the pain I felt, not forgive them. Like, I've never, and I think that's the hard thing about the healing process is a lot of people think you have to forgive the people that have wronged you. Fuck
Yeah, I don't
that
think
shit.
I don't.
Seriously. Like, no, it's about forgiving yourself for like what they cost
Yeah.
you. And still, despite of all of that, realizing that you're deserving of pleasure. You can have loving relationships. Like, you can have amazing sex. And like, just because something bad happened to you where you didn't have the right to choose and it was taken from you doesn't mean that you can't have that again.
Yeah.
It's hard to navigate intimacy like after that. And like a lot of people have trouble with that. Like, I know I did. I think initially after I like gained 50 pounds because subconsciously I wanted to make
Mhm.
myself as like unattractive as possible as a protection mechanism and like completely shut down. Then I swung the opposite end of being hypersexual to where I was back to my regular programming of being a slut in LA in college and hooking up with randoms at bars and stuff like that because I was like, well, they can't take this from me if I'm actively participating in it. But it was still like I still wasn't doing the healing. And I think everyone can like oscillate on either side or keep going back and forth or choose one or many years change the rest. And like with the healing journey, like there's no right or wrong way to heal. Like everyone is different. But I think what ended up causing issues for me was there was one partner that I had. This was like similar time to where I left my job, had my mental breakdown. When I was actively trying to do the work, I had a partner that dealt with drug and alcohol abuse. It was like not a great situation. When we were having sex, it was like very like intense. There were a lot of like feelings, very like not safe, not grounded. I started having flashbacks from my sexual assault. And he was not a safe
Yeah.
person. So he didn't know how to hold space for me in that. And I felt like I was wrong for having that. I was like, if this is an experience that I want to have, why is this thing from the past happening? Like, why is this coming up now? He wasn't with it enough because also he was super fucked up, like on drugs and alcohol. But also, like, he didn't have the emotional awareness or safety or capacity to hold space for me in that. And so that was kind of the experience where I realized, like, this person isn't a safe partner. His roommate told me that he was hooking up with other people when we were supposed to be monogamous, and he actually gave me herpes because he cheated on me. So that was fun. But like because of a situation like that, to where I realized, okay, this isn't a safe person. I can't heal with this person. I stopped dating. I took it off the table until I felt like I was at the point where this wasn't going to affect me anymore. And I know, like, with flashbacks and triggers, like we can't control when it
Mm.
happens. It happens randomly. It can be a sound, like a certain song maybe is associated with a
Yep.
memory. It could be a
I smell
scent.
that,
It could
absolutely. Yeah.
be something that someone said. Like, it could be a certain position or maybe something that moved in your body. Like, we cannot control like the triggers, but it's really important to make sure that you feel safe with whoever your partner is. And if you don't feel safe enough to talk about your trauma and have those conversations, is probably not a person that you want to be having sex with anyways, and certainly not a person you want to be in a relationship with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can never understand what it's like as a man to feel that. And you talked before very briefly about the Diddy of the cases ongoing. You got Epstein, you got Weinstein. We had Savile in the UK and Fired. We've got now so many people, and it's that both physical power and influence and master manipulation, really. that people are, well, why did you, but you never said no. But when I was 16, he was 55 and promising me partying, blah, blah, blah. And everybody did it and never didn't do it. There's 1,000 other girls that will do it. And yeah. So I guess, like, so you almost potentially, again, without knowing, as a young woman, you think, well, I didn't say no, and I did go along with it, and yeah, so it can't have been assault. But in all the possible explanations, understandings, whatever, it absolutely was assault. And that's what these people relied on, and it's terrible, but it's good in a way that it's been hopefully. I mean, I'm sure this is literally the tip of a massive iceberg, and there's so many other predators underneath that. But at least it's showing that no matter how powerful you might be, billionaire, record company, whatever, you're still ultimately not above things. But one of the challenges, I think, there were lots of elements that facilitated it. I mean, it's knowledge was in court. Obviously there was the film of Diddy in the hotel, and the hotel had to pay the sort of victim $10 million, and they didn't say anything about it. They didn't come out and say, "Well, this is terrible," because everybody gets affected around it. I guess it just becomes, "Oh, well, that's just him. That's just what he does," and it's always a him. I'm sure there are examples of female
Yeah, I
predators, but
mean, like,
99% are
yeah,
women.
not to like gloss over, there absolutely are like male or non-binary people who experience like
Yeah,
sexual assault, but like
yeah,
statistically, it's more women, and part of that's just like the nature of a lot of society heterosexual,
Hmm.
and also just like men physically
Yeah,
overpower women in most cases, and also the power dynamic of the
hmm,
money, of
yeah,
success, of whatever, like, and they use it to their advantage. I mean, even God, I can't remember the name of this woman. This is going to drive me crazy, but I don't know if you remember that case of the woman who found out that she was drugged by her
yes,
husband,
in
and
France.
all of these
Oh my
men,
goodness,
yeah,
yeah,
and all of these
yeah,
men were just like raping
yeah.
her essentially. And like, I think she won the
She did.
case, which is good. And I'm so glad that we're now in a society where these people are being held accountable for the horrible things that they're doing. But it's also at the same time, it's so tough being in a society where there's so much manosphere, red pill content, and very
Yeah,
problematic stuff like Andrew Tate, and so much
yeah,
stuff that's like we're in this like split era where there's so many people who are very like pro consent and believe about human rights and believe about respect and like good relationships, and then on the other end of the spectrum it's the complete opposite, where there's so much entitlement
yeah,
that a lot of men have to women's bodies, treat us like property, as you can see with like at least in the US, like losing access to
yeah,
abortion rights. And I know it's not just US, it's across the globe. There are so many places where like women don't have rights to things. So it's so interesting living in a time where like at one time or in one way we are making progress because very powerful wealthy people are being held accountable in ways that they never were before, but also at the same time with the rise of social media and access to more information, more problematic stuff is being delivered to people who are like, the incel population, which like they wouldn't be an incel if they, maybe respected women or maybe had other information to where like they learned how to be an actual functioning member of society and learn relationships. And that's sort of back to like the sex education piece too, like what I truly believe, and I think what's missing is like I think a lot of people and governments like don't realize that sex education is beyond just like educating about like the mechanics of sex. What it really should be is a holistic inclusive view of gender, of sexuality, of emotional regulation, of
mm,
recognizing patterns of
yeah,
abuse, all of these things, like of consent. And like consent can be taught to children as young as like preschool. And it's like obviously not in the context of sex. It's like with, getting a hug
yeah.
or sharing toys and stuff like that. There's ways to communicate that in a way that they understand that's not necessarily sexually
No,
driven, you know? but like these conversations need to be had in different ways and in a more well-rounded way. And I think with back to like the shame piece and the taboo of talking about sex, the more taboo it is, the more people are going online and finding these problematic things or going to mainstream porn. And I will say, like, I'm not anti-porn at all. I do think porn can be helpful, but it's all about like mindful consumption of it. But like if you're being fed all of this problematic shit, I think there's also, I forget who is doing research, but there's a research study that's gone out on like how long it takes the algorithm to start feeding red pill content to male profiles. And I think I just saw this yesterday. It's 23 minutes into starting a new account where they start seeing content like that. And it's just like, if that's being fed, of course this problem is getting worse and worse.
And I think, and this is probably one from another podcast, but that's one of the challenges that we have in society generally, that we seem to have much less nuanced discussion and agreement and coalescing around a point. And we have extremes. We have what some people might call the very woke left and then the very anti-woke right, and there's an absolute massive space in the middle that just doesn't get explored. It's just, yeah, you're either, I mean, and it's the same with the politics, I guess. You have extreme Democrats, extreme Republicans, and you seem to get, you're both extremes, but there's a massive space, you would think, in the middle where people that can agree on some things, disagree on some things. It's either, you've got to be completely on this side or completely on that side, which is really hard, really. I did want to get on to what you're doing now. And
Yeah.
first of all, I love the words, your pleasure path. And that's a really welcoming place to go to. And I wonder what were your hopes when you first came up with the idea? What are the hopes and visions for the future? What will and does pleasure path bring to people that find it?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I first came up with the name, so first of all, when I started coaching, I was doing life coaching for about a year before I switched into sex and relationships. And so my original business name was called Live Authentically Now, because I really want people to feel authentic and unique in their experiences. And then when it came to creating my like sex coaching business, I really, part of it was like redefining your relationship to sex and redefining your relationship to
Yeah.
pleasure. And that's something that's like very much ingrained in how I teach, what I do, how I work with clients. I mean, even in my onboarding process, like I will ask questions. How do you define pleasure? How do you define intimacy? How do you define sex? And so, really, with coming up with this name and like creating this business, is like I want people to realize that they're like an active participant in their pleasure and really view pleasure and sex as a self discovery
Mhm.
journey. Um, and back what we were saying a little earlier too is like most of us are only taught about sex in context with other people. And so we're not really taught about what that relationship is like with ourselves. And I know, like, for me too, I think COVID ending that relationship that was problematic and triggering for me allowed me to focus on myself and my healing. And when COVID shut things down, I had like a few periods of time where like I went fully celibate. I was trying to like not, I was masturbating some, but like the first couple years, it was still like very much like watch porn, same hand, same lube, get it done. Very like, this is just what it is. And then during COVID, that's when I realized that, okay, actually, I want to have a different relationship with pleasure. I want to explore what feels good for me. And so, like, I stopped using vibrators. I still will use stuff. I stopped watching porn. And my purpose, like, I was a daily masturbator at that point. But the goal was to just focus on the sensations that felt
Mhm.
good without any pressure of going anywhere, without any pressure of having an orgasm. And at that point, like, I already knew that I was multi-orgasmic. And so, like, it's fun. It can be super fun. But what helped me was like realizing like my relationship to pleasure can be a spiritual journey. It can be an energetic exchange and like leaning into that. So like I would listen to like chakra healing music or listen to like baddie pop star artists, like God is a Woman by Ariana Grande is like what I would masturbate to. I started tapping into like sex magic and orgasmic manifesting to like have things happen in my life. I started masturbating in the morning instead of the evening because I realized it gave me more energy, and with that more energy it gave me more clarity to have more creativity that I can fuel into like my work and the stuff that I did. So giving myself the permission to redefine completely what pleasure looked like and felt like for me, like that's something that I wanted to be able to empower other people to figure out, is like, know that just because you've been doing something one way your whole life doesn't mean you have to continue. And also just like crack the door open a little bit to be open to discovery, be open to new things, and exploring. And then the your, like that truly is like it's your journey. I'm very much the type of person and coach where like I don't have one methodology where I guide every single person through. Yeah, I have things that work, but I know everyone's an individual living in an individual
Mhm.
experience. That's probably bad for like my overall branding, but like from a human level, I'm like, you're not just a number that I'm moving through this program. You're an actual human with your own experiences, your own limitations, your own conditioning. And so, like, this gets to be your own journey. It can be your journey in relation to your partner, but I really want you to give yourself permission for it to be your own and your own fully. And I think part of that too is like a lot of us, I don't know, especially women. But a lot of us have the expectation that also too, if you're in a relationship, that you should only be having sex with your partner and not masturbating. When in reality, it's like you should still be masturbating. Just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean all of your orgasm have to come from this person. So figuring out what your unique pleasure path is, like that's really, it gives you permission to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah. How do you start with somebody when somebody comes to you and they might say that I'm struggling to having for a relationship. My last relationship broke up. I didn't find it fulfilling. It was very very mundane and not enjoyable for me, and I just didn't feel pleasure. How do you start the journey? So, like I say, it's a path, isn't it? It's a path with hopefully with a destination you're aiming to get to. How do you help people take the first step almost?
Yeah, so typically when I work with clients like one-on-one, therapy is different than coaching, and I'm a
Yep.
coach. So I'm very much, even though I'm trauma informed, we will work on the deep
Okay.
stuff. I'm very much I want to help you get to whatever destination you want to
Mhm.
get to. So that's built into my framework, how I work with clients. So typically it starts with like an initial consultation call, get to know a little bit about you. I have an application process now too for folks just to make sure that it's like a mutual fit. And then I have a 2.5 hour onboarding session, which is
Mm.
long. But the reason why is I want to get like a deep dive history. I also will send a initial like onboarding questionnaire that I expect my clients to spend 1 to 2 hours filling out. There's a lot of questions. There's like 20 questions, and it's like I want a deep history. And then I also want to know like what you want out of it. So we talk about
Yeah.
goals, and like we'll go through the history in this intake, but then we'll also set goals together. Some of the goals could be like around, I want to feel more confident in my
Mhm.
body, or I want to start dating again, or like I can only come when I'm by myself and not with my partner, or I have anxious attachment and I feel like my partner is going to break up with me, or I had surgery and like I'm feeling very disconnected to pleasure. Like everyone has their own stuff, or like I experienced sexual trauma and now I'm having flashbacks. Everyone has their
Yeah.
own sort of overall intention. And then we come up together with like usually 3 specific goals that are like checkpoints that we get to throughout the journey. And then how it looks like week to week is I have longer sessions. I do 90-minute sessions. It's broken down by some talk. We do a subconscious programming tool every single session. And then we talk about how that went. I assign some homework. I assign like journal prompts, sometimes self pleasure rituals, sometimes like meditation. We usually do EFT tapping at the very beginning, and I record a custom EFT tapping for my clients so that they can have the tools to regulate their nervous system. And that's sort of where my coaching is different than a lot of people, is like, I'm not just providing sex education. I'm not just helping you have better orgasms and better sex with your partner. We're doing a holistic, like 360 approach to helping yourself feel more regulated and safe in your body. And that's working through things like anxiety, working through things um, like nervous habits, working through things of like limiting
Mm.
beliefs. And we're kind of looking at it all and providing you the tools and framework to where this isn't a codependent relationship. I'm guiding you on this journey, but you have your own answers. I'm giving you the tools so that you can regulate yourself, so that you can create these rituals to where you feel better. And then typically with clients, I only work with them 3 to 6 months, maybe 12 months max. And my goal is like, I want my clients to graduate. I want them to feel good. I want them to feel like they don't need me anymore. And so, like, I'm not the type of person where, like, I know traditional therapy is different, where sometimes you have that rapport where you're with the same therapist for multiple years, and that can be great for certain things. I work very well in conjunction with people who are currently going to therapy because we're focused on other things. But like, I like working with people who have already gone to therapy or are currently in therapy. It's good, like, in conjunction with it. It's like, I'm not the first
Mm.
step to unlocking everything. I'm the next one. I'm deepening it. I'm figuring out how to have more and feel safe doing it.
It's interesting, isn't it? I guess your target ultimately is to make yourself redundant to the client.
Yeah, I know. It's probably a horrible
Well,
business
no, but
model.
it's well, it just shows you the honesty, really, doesn't it? And I've been in therapy before, and I've going in and out and stuff. And sometimes I think, well, we just seem to be going over the same thing week after week. I'm not sure is ever going to come to an end. Am I just going to be paying you $100 a week for the next 10 years? That's sometimes you like you said before. I think sometimes with talking therapy and therapy that you might give some of the issues oxygen and air and raise them, but I always found it was I was sort of left with them really, as opposed to actually them going through me and almost going through the body in a somatic sense. I guess it was sort of okay. So I've recognized I've got them all now listed, and yeah. So I think there's yeah, and therapy for some things is wonderful, and for some people it's
Yeah,
perfect.
and
But
like,
I just
not hating
no,
on.
not at all. But it's just
Yeah,
in my experience, it was
yeah.
yeah. I almost needed the next thing, which was the yeah. How do you action these things now? So some of the techniques you mentioned, I'm aware of. So EFT and NLP, and but I just wanted to. So obviously everybody's aware of hypnosis, but I wonder how hypnosis is utilized, and also I wasn't aware of time techniques. I wonder if you could just
Mhm.
touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so time techniques is actually a submodality of NLP.
Okay.
So NLP is neuro-linguistic
Mhm.
programming. So neuro-linguistic programming is a pattern of language that speaks to your subconscious mind, but you're fully conscious, awake, and aware. And fun fact, a lot of politicians and marketing use NLP in marketing copy and language. So it's just persuasive
Mhm.
language that helps ingrain those thought patterns. And that's why in marketing and politics, it's to help you evoke a certain response
Okay.
by the way that they're speaking to prime you to buy or vote a certain way or whatnot. So it's used all of the time. It can be used problematically. It can also be used for good, like in this case. When it comes to time techniques, what time techniques is it's working with timeline therapy
Mm.
essentially. So, like I was saying before, with going back to the
Mhm.
past to heal trauma, or go back to the past where you have a limiting belief or a heavy emotion like
Yeah.
sadness and anger. We usually do back to back because at the base of anger usually is sadness. they could be connected to the same
Mm-hmm.
memory. But timeline therapy allows us to go back to the memory where this decision, belief, or experience began. And then we go to that moment, we disassociate. So we're not looking in our own eyes, we're looking like we are out of the window looking in. If that's still too close and you're feeling the emotions, you are sitting on your couch watching it on the TV screen and then watching it take place. If that's still too close, you're in a movie theater watching it on the screen, watching you on the couch. If it's still too close, you go to the projector booth watching you there. Then so you disassociate intentionally by several levels. And what this does is it allows us to access the subconscious mind
Mm-hmm.
directly, take whatever your brain needs you to know in order for you to like release it so that it's not causing you so much pain. And the goal with this is like not to feel the emotions. Sometimes emotions do come up, obviously. But the goal is to not have it be such like a heavy thing that's just such a heavy weight. And that's why with clients too, it's like even if they come to me with sexual trauma, we don't go deep into it until maybe like after month
Yeah.
1 to whatever, because we need to build that rapport to where you actually trust me and know me. And I will say, like, most people work with me because of the way that I speak, because I share a lot about my own stuff. So people do typically feel comfortable with me like very early on. But at the same time, I'm like, I know how the brain works. I know how the subconscious mind works. And it's never my goal to make you feel unsupported. And so, like, with time techniques, like, we go back to the past, we take the learnings, we actually go back even further, like 5 minutes or a day before that began, to really like let it go. And then I sometimes integrate other techniques. Like sometimes it's inner child
Mm-hmm.
healing. Like if it's a situation that happened when you were a small child, I will sometimes ask you to step into the picture of your future self and give your younger self a hug or talk to them, or that's an opportunity for like reparenting some of the beliefs and trauma. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with like epigenetics, and how like trauma is
Yeah.
passed down through generations. There are a lot of limiting beliefs, trauma stuff, like especially like beliefs about pleasure and sex that are so deeply ingrained, but they were never explicitly discussed or talked about. We can go back to, your mom, your grandma, your dad, your great grandparents, and access the memory, even if consciously you're like, I've never even met this person. Your body knows. So we can go back to where it first began. And then for those of you who believe in past lives, I do. You don't have to. But there could also be like past lives where these beliefs began that aren't actually associated with yourself now. And so time techniques allows us to go back to places to get to the root of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening, instead of versus like talk therapy, you're just consciously talking about it. Most of us aren't consciously aware of where it happened. So it allows us to go back to the past. And then where hypnosis comes in, like, so NLP, you're very conscious, awake, and aware during it. Hypnosis, you get into a theta state by verbal induction. The misconception with hypnosis is all hypnosis is self hypnosis. So, like, if you are not interested in it, it will not work. You have to, again, know, like, and trust the person that's leading you through it, whether it's a one on one session, like with me, whether it's listening to a hypnosis audio. If one little thing in your body feels off, it's not going to work. The suggestions aren't going to work. So, it's very important that you trust the
Yeah.
person. And then with the verbal induction, we get you to the state to where you're in theta state, to where you're suggestible. Within this suggestible state, that's where we can go to really deep seated trauma or very deep limiting beliefs, to where on a conscious level, your brain is still overriding it to where we're not able to get there. So it allows us to go even deeper and pull things out at the root, in a more gentle way, without you even be consciously aware of it. You don't need to be aware of it at all. Um, and I do use hypnosis with clients. Often it just depends on how often and where. I like to give like guided like hypno
Mm-hmm.
meditations for you to like listen to at night or whatnot. And I customize it based on like what we talk about in session. So it's just for you and what you're experiencing. But again, it's very important that you like trust the person. I would recommend, if you're watching like a YouTube video on hypnosis, scroll to the middle just to see what they're saying first before you close your eyes and get into that state, because you never fucking
Yeah.
know. I don't know. There's some weird people out there. But it's not as scary as people make it out to be.
You really go all in, don't you? In terms of,
Yes.
I would never want you to change who you are, what you do. But like I say, from a commercial perspective, it's far easier to have 5 standard courses that you roll out. Yeah, one for this person who's and hit repeat. But I think that's the yeah, that's what I really love. I think is that it's so tailored, and also I think having the 2.5 hour onboarding, the sort of 2 or 3 hour questionnaire filling, etc. I think it weeds out the clients that aren't going to commit, because no matter how amazing you can't, and it's completely the wrong word, but fix somebody. I said it's a bit like when you go to physiotherapy. You can do it for half an hour in that session, but if you don't know anything at home, it's never going to get fixed. It's never going to get better. It's never going to feel better. So you're there holding the space, guiding, giving all the tools, giving everything possible, but then it comes down to the client to, a bit like with hypnosis, to have the trust and the want and the need for things to adjust. And I think a lot of the challenges, in particular, in the last, well, this century, really, I guess, since the sort of 2010, etc., that we've probably had the ability globally to connect with anyone and everyone far easier than ever before. So we're talking now. There's a massive ocean between us. There's a time difference between us. We're talking. I can see you. I can see where you are. I can see where I am. We're talking very comfortably, and it feels very nice. But we were able to connect. But I think in lots of ways, the sort of we seem to be in some ways almost have less of an intimate connection than ever before. And you see, and you read about it a lot. You walk into a house and there's the mum and the dad, or there's the 2 mums or 2 dads or whatever, and the kids, and everybody sat on the phone when the TV's playing in the background. And they're with somebody else somewhere else, even though they're physically in a place. You go onto the bus, onto the subway, onto the metro, whatever. Everybody's on their phone, connected with somebody else. And yes, so we're able to reach out to anybody else. We're able to access all the knowledge in the world that ever existed, but almost the ability to sit and talk with someone and look at them and connect seems to be missing. That's one of my rants. Sorry, this sort of digital age is wonderful in so many ways, but I just think it in so many other ways it's almost puts a barrier between our intimate feelings, not just on a sexual level, on a friendship level, on a family level, on a being intimate. Yeah, I'm not sure there's a question there. Just it's just
No,
my
I
rant.
mean, I'm totally with you on that. I think like technology and the internet has done so many good things. It allows us to have access to more people in ways that we never did before. It allows
Hmm.
us to have access to more education, more tools, more whatever. But yeah, we oftentimes are very like disconnected. A lot of people feel lonely because they might have online friends, but like, how often do you see people in person? Or actually spend the time to be intimate with other people. And I do think like we're seeing a shift like societally on like trying to move more to in person, and especially with like dating and stuff like that. In terms of like tools and support too, like I do have a pleasure membership. It's called Pleasure RX, where like it's very self-paced. All of the tools that I do with my one-on-one clients, like you can access yourself, trainings anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes long, with EFT tapping, with hypnosis, with this and that, with pleasure education, and then a community. But I think some of that too is like knowing that like whatever we do online like has to be supplemented with that in-person connection. We have to put ourselves out there. We have to meet people.
Yeah,
I know I'm someone that loves hosting events, and I host a lot of events here in New York City and beyond. I have a sexpert community here in New York that's expanding globally this summer, where we're having more events, more meetings, more resources for people who are interested in like sex positivity, like workshops, dating events, stuff like that, just more opportunities to find connection, where so many of us are just so glued to the internet. So I think it's important to like put yourself out there and make an active role in
Mm.
that. I know that's like easier said than done for a lot of us, and not discounting anyone's like uh what's it called? I forget the specific anxiety.
Mm.
That's
A lot, yeah.
being in
Yeah,
groups.
people have that
Yeah.
sort of social anxiety, don't they? And it just,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's funny, isn't it? 'Cause a few years ago, we used to, you might not have, but many of us would sort of have sex, roll over, and light a cigarette. Whereas now we sort of have sex, roll over, pick up a phone. It's like, well, just be in the moment for longer than a moment. If that makes sense. It's sort of, yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't sort of stop and start where that it just, yeah. No, it's interesting. I've taken a huge amount of your time already. Sorry, I've got a few more questions. If that's
Oh
okay.
my god, no. Yeah, totally.
So and this is a personal one. So from everything you've sort of been through, all experiences you've had, all experiences you've been made aware of, and the people you've talked to, and the people you've supported, how is your level of intimacy, your level of pleasure now? Are you comfortable in relationships now? Are you comfortable with yourself? Are you comfortable with what sex means to you, what intimacy means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work on
Yeah.
myself, and I think that's part of why, like, I'm so good at what I
Mhm.
do is, like, I'm my own first and best testimonial. I very much, like, walk the walk and talk the talk, and, like, I truly guide people through my own experience based on lived experience and then backed by all of my education and certifications and stuff and, like, research driven education. So it's like lived experience first, and then, okay, here's the science and psychology that backs it up. I've done, yeah, a lot of shifts in my own life to redefine my relationship to pleasure. I've done a lot of progress on like healing my avoidant attachment tendencies to move towards, secure attachment, to be not afraid of intimacy and like be open to partnership. I've done a lot of work on myself to not be chasing the validation and trying to reach for the O. I think other shifts that have happened, like with my libido, I'm someone that historically always had a very high libido and always was more spontaneous. I didn't really need much to like get me going. Being in grad school and being in my 30s changed that for me. I am so stressed. I'm so tired that like maybe I think I probably went a whole month where I didn't masturbate once. I didn't self-pleasure once, and giving myself permission to know that like sometimes it's a season, sometimes it's like things that are going
Yeah.
on your life circumstances, sometimes it's stress, and knowing that things can change. It can change overall, it can change just for a little bit, but also knowing that like this is something that everyone experiences. Your libido will not be the same your entire life. It will not be the same your entire relationship. It ebbs and flows. There's so many factors that go into it, like sleep, like stress, like medications that you're taking, like diet, like exercise, like water. There's so many things that can affect it. But I think the biggest thing is realizing is that I'm fully embodied in the experience and living the experience and not making it mean anything, and just like letting things flow. But yeah, absolutely. I've done so much work on myself to get to where I am. And like, funny enough, I was speaking to my therapist yesterday, which I do still go to therapy. I'm not against it. But looking back at like where I was, even 2 years ago or 5 years ago, or when I was in high school, like where I am now, I never thought was possible, period. Never. And like every single day, like that's why it's so important to look back at how far you've
Yeah.
come, is because we can be so focused on like trying to get to a destination, but even if it seems like you're stuck, looking back, you're not exactly where you were a year ago. Maybe you haven't achieved the thing that you wanted. Maybe you're not in a relationship. Maybe things have gotten a little stale in the bedroom, but like I'm pretty sure you've learned something. I'm pretty sure that something has changed. I'm pretty sure you've made some big
Mhm.
moves. And if you look at your life and you're like, maybe I haven't, maybe this is your wake up call to start doing that and start living the life on your terms.
Mm. So your personal pleasure path feels quite secure. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say so. It's not what it used to look like for sure. Grad school and being an adult with adult problems will do that to you. But it's also like I'm very much mindful in my experiences. Like where before I used to be a quickie girl, like now I'm a marathoner. And I'm like, every time I'm with a partner, it's like I expect like 2 hours or more. So it's very like intentional driven instead of like higher
Yeah.
frequency. Um, yeah.
We started the conversation with your sexual experiences at school and your mum slut shaming you
hmm
and driving you to boarding school with saying some terrible things. Do you have a relationship with your mum now?
It's very complicated, but yes. My relationship with my mom, it's always been complicated. She's bipolar
Mm.
and not medicated, and like no shade to like mental illness. I've struggled with mental illness my whole life. But I think having a relationship with someone who doesn't take accountability for the role that they play in
Yeah.
whatever has made no acknowledgement on like the pain that she's caused. She used to physically hurt me too, like hit me when I was a lot younger. And there were long periods of time where, like, after I left boarding school, I lived with my
Hmm.
dad. He worked out of the country. He worked in the Philippines. So once I started driving, I lived at his house by myself. So I was unsupervised 16, 17-year-old living in the house for 2 weeks at a time by myself for like 2 years. So I had to grow up pretty fast. But like, I didn't have much of a relationship with her in high school. In college, she followed me down to LA, basically didn't give me a choice, which was horrible. And then I've gone through periods of life where I think there was maybe like a 2 year period where I blocked her completely and was no
Yeah.
contact because I just like needed to. I do have a relationship with her now. I actually saw her just last week. She lives in DC, so I took the train out to go see her. Um, and the only way that I've been able to have a relationship with her and my dad, even though they were not great parents, not to shame them, but like they just weren't. They weren't what I needed. But what helped me heal that and not put so much pressure on that is viewing them as flawed
Yeah.
humans instead of in the role of like they're my parents, they should have known better. They were doing the best they could with what they had, and again, that's not an excuse, but their lived experience is different than mine. They didn't have the tools, they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the awareness that I do now, and like I know that I will never treat my kids the way that I was treated. But also realizing that, like, they're flawed humans and that's that. And knowing that if I want to have a relationship with them, I have to have very strong boundaries. So with my parents, like, it's very much I choose when to
Mhm.
spend time with them. It's very short periods of time. We have a very long list of things that we don't talk about because my career path is very triggering for both of them. So it took a lot of like healing on myself to realize that like what I'm doing is very
Mm.
important, that I shouldn't feel shame for it, and knowing that like their projections is their thing. But also like I don't know, it's okay to not have a relationship with your parents either. I go back and forth every every week on like whether or not I want to talk to them. So it's okay to go no contact. You're not obligated to have a relationship with your parents just because they're your parents. And I think that's like so diminishing when people assume that like okay it's your mom, so like why aren't you talking to them, but it's like if they're an abusive person, like why, so there's nothing wrong with setting boundaries, there's nothing wrong with going no contact, and there's nothing wrong with if you want to repair
Yeah.
it you can, but also know that like your parents, if they cause harm, they're likely not going to change, and just accepting
Yeah.
that, and I think that's what's the opportunity for healing there.
Mm. What is it they say? You choose your friends, but you can't choose your parents, or can't choose your family. So, and it's true. Yeah, and but also like you say, and you're very gracious to say this. I think is that generation before didn't have all of these tools, techniques, people like you to reach out to and stuff. So I do hope that your generation, my children's generation, had as much. But and I'm really, I don't know why. I'm just really, really pleased that your experience hasn't put you off the possibility of one day having children.
Yeah, no, I very much want kids. My ovaries are in overdrive. And I froze my eggs for my 30th birthday 2 years ago just to give myself some extra time. But I very much want to have a family. I want to have kids. I want to have lots of kids. And I think part of also too, back to like my healing journey, like the reason why I've prioritized healing myself so much is like I know that the pattern ends with me. The cycle of violence ends with me. And so not that having kids is my opportunity to like change things, but I just know that like I'm going to be the parent that I wish I had. And I'm very excited for that. I'm excited to see what happens in the future.
And that's a massive deal to like put the full stop on what happened before. When I one of the life changing books that I read was Your Body Keeps the Score, and that really sort of talks
Mhm.
about it. And it is. And if you recognise that the different generations and what's happened, etc., you're carrying it, and it's just being aware, really. So my very last question, if that's okay, was or is so so I can't think of anybody that's experienced as much as you have. A lot of it intentionally experienced, and you've driven the desire to experience different things and meet with different clients. You must hear at times some harrowing stories that are very difficult to carry with you, and you're then helping the person to come through that. So I just wondered how you the right words, how you sort of protect and nourish your own mental and physical well-being, because you don't want to carry all this trauma with you. How do you not get out of your own space, but you know what I mean? How do you make sure you're mentally nourished and feeling as good as you can?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question for anyone that's like a
Mm.
practitioner that works with people in mental health field
Mhm.
or otherwise, like when you're with people all of the time. I'm very much like a woo-woo kind of person. Energy is absorbed. We know
Yeah.
that in general. So I think having good energetic hygiene is important. And like it doesn't have to be
Mm.
woo-woo. Like it can just be like having rituals that help ground your
Yeah.
energy. I think number one, like coming back to self care, especially if working with people, it's like your self care is even that much more
Yes.
important and you have to fill up your cup first. So like I'm very much the type of person where like I never have been a morning person. I hate mornings. I can be productive in the mornings, but like I don't enjoy it. Giving yourself even 5-10 minutes in the morning can help you regulate yourself first before you pour into other people. So like when I'm on my A game, when I have the time, I have like a 2-hour morning routine. And like that's when I feel the most luxurious. I like wake up, I walk my dog, I like will make breakfast, I will take a shower, I will have a self-pleasure ritual. I will do EFT tapping or hypnosis. I will pull like tarot or oracle cards. Like I will just like give myself the space to do whatever feels good, journal, whatever. Um and then once I feel like my cup is full, then I will respond to
Mhm.
emails. Then I will take clients. And I think part of that also is like scheduling, knowing your own energy. I'm a night owl, so I will not typically take calls before 11. So you're very lucky
Thank you. Thank
with
you
the
for
time
doing that.
difference. No, but I in like joking, but
No,
in all
no.
honesty, it's like I know that like I'm not gonna be my best human self at 8 a.m. So I know that I will meet with people on times that feel good for me. That has changed over time. Like when I was at the beginning of my coaching journey, I was very over accommodating, um, letting people late cancel, reschedule, all of that. And just know your energy is important and like you need to have those boundaries in
Mm.
place. You can charge for people not showing up. Like that's protecting your
Mm.
energy. And then I also will have like a little ritual before I hop on call with people. So that could be something so simple as like lighting a candle, and like that candle symbolizes the space that you're holding for this person, and then you blow it out when the session is done. That can be walking around the block, that can be washing your hands. I'm also Reiki certified. I don't really talk about it, but it's like just the energy clearing. You can visualize like rain falling above you and washing the energy away. Like, you don't have to hold on to your client's shit because it's not yours. You can temporarily in the session, but it's not yours to carry, even if it's something that you're guiding them through.
Perfect. I'm glad you have rituals to look after yourself, because yeah, like I say, you want to show up as the best person you can be for no matter what the situation. Yeah, and it's important to be able to hold something and then let it go and then come back to it again. So I just want to offer a massive thank you for all the time you've given, so much more than I expected, and for I expected you to be open. I didn't necessarily expect you to be so, what's my word? Not self-aware, that's the wrong word, but almost to be so willing to go back and explore some things I know were terrible, and explore how they've linked to where you are today. So no, massive thank you, and keep doing what you're doing, and huge good luck with the studies. 1 year to go, and you can hopefully relax and find some. And you
Yeah.
almost wonder, God, what did I do before I was studying? So,
Yeah, it's so interesting because when I was in undergrad, I couldn't wait to get out, and I was a communications
Mhm.
major in PR, and like I loved those classes, but I didn't like traditional education wasn't built
Yeah.
for me. I also was like late diagnosed ADHD, so I didn't know until I was
Mhm.
28, which makes sense why I didn't like school. But after I left, I self-enrolled in more. I did my digital marketing and PR, and I thought I was going to get an MBA, so I was doing pre-MBA
Mhm.
math classes. Then I did a life coaching certification. Then I did the NLP certification. Then I did Reiki. Then I did sex education. Now I'm in masters, and it's almost like I'm a forever student, but I do think that's important because it's like I want to provide the best of me, the best education. And I think you can't just like, you don't know everything once you get certified once. But it's interesting. It's like I'm choosing to be here. I'm choosing, and it's something that I'm actively enjoying. And then part of the path too is like I want to be a human sexuality professor. So once I finish my master's program, that I can do that. So I can be a professor and teach and have more impact in person with folks. So very excited for that.
You are certainly on a journey that's worth watching. I look forward to
Oh,
following it. Thank you again so much. It's been a real
thank
pleasure
you
for
so
me.
much. Thank you so, so much.